It's The Log. I'm Charles Purcell. Is it too late to say Happy New Year? What's the cutoff on that? Let's see. What's going on here? Well, it's official now. Apparently, the Orange Menace has given the Medal of Freedom to Devin Nunes, one of the more comical and pathetic and evil members of Congress. He was the one, if you'll recall, during the impeachment investigations, was basically spying for the White House and carrying information back and forth between the Orange Menace and the Congressional Investigative Committee. He's just a bad guy for all the regular reasons that these right-wing nuts are bad people. But yeah, add to that he was literally spying. At one point, they caught him lurking in the bushes in the dark. I mean, literally. I love this little story from NPR. In announcing the award, the White House said Nunes helped, quote, unearth the crime of the century and thwart a plot to take down a sitting United States president, unquote. And here's the part I like. NPR adds, despite both being patently false. As much as I, well, you know me, big media critic, and as much as I jump on both NPR and PBS for being a little too middle of the road, a little too corporate, I have noticed that this is the kind of language they use pretty regularly. So good for them. Good for them. White House puts out an official statement. They quote the statement, and they say right there in the same, not only in the same paragraph, in the same sentence, that both statements are patently false. Good for them. That's what you have to do. And, boy, Yamiche Alcindor, my favorite on PBS NewsHour, does that consistently because her beat is the White House. They go to her every night. What happened today at the White House? And she has made that a regular feature of her reporting. Well, the White House statement says X, and X is patently false. The president continues to say things that are not true, to say things that he knows are not true. Yeah, good for them. Good for them. But, yeah. Devin Nunes of California, Representative Devin Nunes, getting the Medal of Freedom. Good Lord. And it's been announced that Jim Jordan is going to get one as well. Jim Jordan, among the most repulsive of all Republicans, for various reasons. A high-profile defender, vociferous defense of the Orange Menace at every opportunity and every hearing. And that's how he picks his medal winners. You have to be a toady. You have to be a complete loyal supporter. Recently gave one to Lou Holtz, right-wing nutbag. I'm looking at a list here. It goes back, this list goes to John F. Kennedy, 1963. Well, let's see, is that one the Medal of Freedom? How long has it been around? Yeah, okay. I didn't realize this. Kennedy did establish the current award in 1963. So, just for example, Marian Anderson, opera vocalist, won the award. So, that's on the culture side. And then under the Johnson administration, Walt Disney, T.S. Eliot. So again, a lot from the arts. Edward R. Murrow, journalist. A lot of names here I don't recognize. Civil rights activist Roy Wilkins. Several dozen awards given by each administration. And then over the years, Gerald Ford gave one to Donald Rumsfeld. Yeah, they're handing these things out like Tic Tacs. It's supposed to be the highest civilian award you can get. And this list is just way too long. I can't vouch for all these people. I mean, there's some big names here. Ronald Reagan gave the award to Frank Sinatra, Jimmy Stewart, Mother Teresa, Barry Goldwater. So we definitely have partisans here. You don't have to be a nonpartisan, that's for sure. Oh, and you know, each president, as I'm looking down the list here, seems to give out more. Bill Clinton looks like he gave out about 100 of them. W gave one to Nelson Mandela. Good for that. And Bill Cosby, which in hindsight doesn't look so good. Muhammad Ali, that was great. But again, these lists are very long. This award is not special. Now, by comparison, the Orange Menace has only awarded 20 medals. And his list doesn't look all that different. But when you give it to Rush Limbaugh and Devin Nunes, you're definitely pushing the boundaries here. And now, what's his name? Jim Jordan coming up next. If the award was already not quite as special, unique, pristine as some of us might have thought, still, this really puts a tarnish on it. You know, it's funny. I saw a post the other day from one of my friends, and it said, "If anyone can have it, I don't want it." And that really struck me. This was before the news of Jordan and Nunes getting this presidential award. So it wasn't about that. I think it was just a coincidence. But what do you suppose my friend meant by that? It really struck me to the point where I remembered it. If anyone can have it, I don't want it. What do you suppose that meant? I'll have to go back and find that post and ask. It's like, what do you mean by this? I hesitate engaging with people in social media, though. It never ends well. But to me, that's kind of a Melania sort of statement. That's, I don't really care, do you? It seems selfish and uncaring. If anyone can have it, I don't want it. I think the sentiment should be the exact opposite. If everyone can't have it, I don't want it. Yeah, it sounds like something Melania would say. By the way, where is Melania? Is she still in the White House, or she hightailed it back to New York? Do you ever look at conservative threads, comment threads? The right-wingers? Oh, they love Melania. And their favorite word is classy. Oh, such class. You're a class act. You're so classy. Anybody who uses the word classy in that manner has no earthly conception of what that word means. Now, the whole idea of judging so-called first ladies is abhorrent to me. The way they're judged, the basis on which they're judged, whether or not they dressed well, or they were classy or beautiful, or it's just so anachronistic. I just don't want to have any part of that. So I'm not going to criticize Melania on those grounds at all. But in the handful of public acts where she displayed her taste, her character, just herself generally, she just really fits like a glove in that horrid, horrid family. From destroying the rose garden to those bizarre, ostentatious Christmas decorations every year. Speaking of Christmas, oh God, the tape, the audio tape of Christmas. And then in that same tape, her attitude about the kids in cages. This, that. Oh my God, just a horrid, horrid person. The fact that she'd marry the guy in the first place tells you everything you need to know. And you know, I wouldn't even criticize her for the naked photos. I'm not a prude. I don't discriminate against sex workers. But have you seen the naked pictures of Melania? They're just, oh my God, they're just disgusting. They're so gross. Yeah, it's like, it's one thing to do porn or soft porn, but at least could you try to do good porn? This was horrible. Yeah, it reminds me again of something we've mentioned a few times when it comes to the Orange Menace and his weird little family. The quote that was going around A dumb person's idea of a smart person. A weak person's idea of a strong person. What else was in that list? I remember there were a few. A coward's idea of a brave person. And then the one that applies here, a poor person's idea of a rich person. So these are kind of poor yokels who have no idea, who have no independent notion of aesthetics or taste or class. And they've been duped into thinking that what the Orange Menace and his family represent is classy. I mean, did you see the pictures from the New Year's Eve party at Mar-a-Lago? Oh, these people. Lord, these people. What is it about money? I'd love to take a deep dive into this. I'd love to know. There's been some research that shows that money really does make people mean and selfish, holes, if you will. Yeah, I've seen headlines, and I've seen that researchers have looked into this. The more money you have, the greater the chance that you're going to be an asshole. Well, I think it also, and I'd like to see the research on this, it does something horrible to your sense of aesthetics, to your taste, your style. Rich people are just grotesque. And this goes back to a favorite little topic of mine, and that is that there is value in artistic expression, in aesthetics, in design, appreciation for art, for music. I've always been a great believer that these elements of the culture reveal to us who we are as a people. They hold up a mirror. So I would reject one end of the extreme, where I used to be on this end a little bit more. Completely reject the idea of fashion or design, even one's taste in art. None of it mattered. Just be a good person. But over the years, my ideas have shifted on this. Because art, design, fashion, architecture have a great deal to do with how we see ourselves, how we see each other, how we want to treat each other. They reflect our values, both individual and collective. Now, the other end of the extreme, it's all about what I can show you. And I'm sure we've all seen the pictures of the Trump Tower penthouse, right? And the golden toilets and all of that. And that's always been with us. Kings and monarchs and pharaohs, emperors, every culture has this sort of bizarre opulence at the very top of the social strata. I saw an article early in this administration comparing the Orange Menace and his penthouse apartment and his basic design preferences as compared to dictators, Saddam Hussein, others. And the similarity was so striking. So, yeah, we'll have to look into this. I haven't seen any research on this. Why people with power and money not only become assholes, but become completely void of taste. Their aesthetic just becomes grotesque. And bringing this back to Melania, again, I really don't want to judge her on this anachronistic first lady scale. But by everything I've been able to gather about this person, she's genuinely a terrible human being. and just fits perfectly into that family. Yeah, we were talking about the New Year's Eve party at Mar-a-Lago. You probably heard. Well, of course, he wasn't there. It wasn't until mid-afternoon or something that they found out he wasn't going to be there. He decided at the last minute to fly back to D.C. Had things to do. He had 11,000 votes to find. So all these people are coming to Mar-a-Lago, expecting him to be there. I said, oh, no, sorry. But apparently all the kids were there and their spouses and Rudy Giuliani, the My Pillow guy, all the big stars were there. I was surprised to read that Mike Love of the Beach Boys entertained. I didn't know Mike Love was on that side of the spectrum. And of course, maskless, which is really why I bring it up. Another super spreader. You know, we're getting too comfortable with that word. A word that, I don't know, was this even a word a year ago? Is this a new word? I noticed that my spell check doesn't like it. It underlines it in squiggly red. If I type it in, they don't recognize the word. Online dictionaries, I guess, have it. But yeah, super spreader. And I don't think people understand what that word means exactly. And let's get clear. It doesn't mean you're endangering the health and the lives of the people in that room only. Yes, you are. But the definition of super spreader means that a gathering like that will present danger to the entire surrounding community, and indeed to the whole country. Because if you get 200 or 300 or 400 people in a room, they're all going to get in their cars and go home back to their towns. Many of them are going to get on airplanes back to towns further away, hence super spreader. And it's hard to estimate, but you saw the stories about the big Sturgis bike rally over the summer and how the virus just fanned throughout the Midwest and the nation from that one event. That's what a super spreader is. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember reading that the Orange Menace's campaign rallies were responsible for thousands and thousands of deaths by COVID. Not just from the people who attended, but from the fact that they then fanned out from that gathering. And we keep seeing it over and over. The New Year's Eve party at Mar-a-Lago. State houses all around the country. State lawmakers are gathering, just as they did in Wisconsin yesterday, to be sworn in, bring the family, bring the kids. Everybody have their little inaugural session of the state assemblies, state senates. We saw it on the floor of the House of Representatives. Big swearing-in ceremony. Did you see the pictures? No social distancing. People in there for hours together. A good number of the Republicans not wearing masks. Somebody posted a picture. That was incredible. Of half a dozen Republican state legislators in Madison at the Capitol in Wisconsin. The picture was them with their heads bowed in prayer. A moment of silence for the 5,000 plus Wisconsinites who have died from COVID. And these state legislators were all maskless. Indoors, together. Ay, how dumb are we? Oh, speaking of Congress, that reminds me. I saw a little item from Pew Research, and they tell us that the numbers in Congress remain pretty consistent. We were just talking yesterday about how they're the most women ever in Congress. That's good. We were pointing out the first gay, this, first African American, that, first Korean women. It was just this nice little list of firsts, and that's great. And with each year, Congress seems to get just a little bit more diverse. Oh, but it's slow. The progress is so slow. And Pew reminds us that the vast majority of the 117th Congress is still male, it's still white. And the headline here that caught my eye, the religious composition of the 117th Congress. Nearly 9 in 10 members of Congress identify as Christian, 88%, compared with 2/3 of the general public, 65%. And in what's most striking here, do you know how many Americans identify as unaffiliated? And it doesn't break it down any further than that. That maybe means you're spiritual but not religious. That's something a lot of people want to say. I'm looking at a list here. They don't even list atheists and agnostics. I guess that's in the unaffiliated category. Well, anyway, it's 26%. Over 1/4 of Americans identify as unaffiliated. Do you know how many members of Congress identify as unaffiliated? 1. Pew doesn't tell me here who it is. I'd have to look it up. Only 1 out of the entire number of U.S. representatives and senators, but 9 out of 10 of them are Christians. So we agnostics and atheists have to stick together here, and our fellow unaffiliateds, we who represent 26% of the U.S. population. Wouldn't it be nice if we had a little bit of representation? Maybe we shouldn't pay our taxes until we get some numbers. Taxation without representation. That's how it goes, right? Isn't that a founding principle? No taxation without representation. Yeah, that caught my eye. Congress also is pretty damn old. The average age of a senator is 63. We've been talking about the leadership. We've been talking about the House leadership, Nancy Pelosi. This may or may not be her last term as Speaker. Do you know how old these guys are? Well, let's see here. Nancy Pelosi is 80. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, let's see, born 1939. So 80, 81, 82. Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, also 80. These people are old. Joe Biden is, 78? Has there ever been a time in history when this has been the case? That the leaders of one party have all been 80-ish? I can't imagine that's ever happened before in our history. I mean, these folks are going to be dead soon. And to paraphrase Scrooge, if they would rather die in office than give up their power, well, they had better do it. Yeah, I don't wish anybody ill, but come on, guys. I mean, this just isn't right. Yeah, the old aphorism that power is never surrendered, only taken. Yeah, I think that applies here. They're just not ever going to give up their power, these guys. And they've got it. Let me tell you, there's way too much power at the top. That'll get us into a whole new line of conversation here. We've talked about before, we'll talk about again. The lack of democracy in this country and the concentration of power among literally a handful. You could count them on one hand. The president, the speaker, the Senate leader, and their deputies. They're just running the place. Of course, they're not the real bosses. They're the managers. They take their orders, of course, from the CEOs. But again, we're opening up large topics of conversation here. Well, instead of going down that rabbit hole, with the little time we have remaining, I want to just mention a couple quick things. I saw a couple of posts like this one from my friend Anthony, who wrote, "As bad as it was, I'm holding on to 2020, a year to learn from, resilience, perspective, appreciation, real love, and a greater sense of inner self." You know what? I'm going to agree with that. My only trouble with it is that I think some people might overemphasize the whole inner growth aspect at the expense of the lessons we should have learned and should be learning about the economic political system we live under. It's all well and good to learn these personal lessons through the hardships of 2020. But if you just leave it there without the bigger questions, I'm afraid it really kind of comes off as elitist white privilege. Yeah, that's dangerous. That's a dangerous road to go down. So I don't disagree with it in and of itself. But if you put all your eggs in that basket, I can't go with you there. No. A better post related. Again, how we're going to look at 2020. This from someone named Kane Wishart. I don't know who that is. I'll have to look that up. Quote, "A lot of folks acting as if 2020 was just a string of bewildering bad luck rather than what it truly was, a concentration of widely and reliably predicted and interconnected disasters that advanced nations of the world could have mitigated or prevented, but chose not to." And that is a message we need to embrace. We need to understand and move forward accordingly. 2020 was not just bad luck. It wasn't just this perfect storm of, oops, how did this happen? Oh, a once in a lifetime, this could never happen again. No. Absolutely predictable, almost inevitable, the result of a world that we created. You and I have talked about how our relationship with the natural world, our careless butchering of our fellow animals on the planet, our disregard for their natural habitat, the precise cause of these viruses and the resulting pandemics. Jane Goodall has written about this. David Attenborough, Bill McKibben, all the leaders of the environmental movement, advocates for the natural world, have been warning us for years and have tried over this last year to tell us, to plead with us, to learn this lesson. So many warnings about the Orange Menace and the radical extremes of the right wing. All the warnings that this was the inevitable result of our embrace of Ronald Reagan and our lurch to the right ever since. 2020 was not an aberration. The horrible murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, the outrage that followed, the Black Panthers of Oakland 50 plus years ago understood the scourge of police brutality, the racism and inequality built right into the institutions, the bedrock institutions of this country. On all of these fronts, we've had warnings, activists and advocates, leaders and scholars pleading with us, begging with us to listen. And now a new chapter in this fight. We cannot allow the whitewashing of 2020. It was not an aberration. It was not a once-in-a-lifetime event that just came out of nowhere. Those who can see the continuum for what it is have to continue to raise their voices against the radical, self-serving voices of those who maintain their power and profit by upholding the very systems that got us here. So as much disdain as we held for 2020, and as much anticipation we shared for the turning of the page, the turning of the calendar page, we can't forget 2020. When it all hit the fan, we have to remember it like we remember other disasters, other catastrophes. Remember Pearl Harbor. Remember 9/11. We commemorate these events in history not because they bring us any joy or pleasure. They're not anniversaries that we celebrate. They're moments in time that we acknowledge. And we keep them so that we can learn from them. And now an entire year with these 3 simultaneous historic events that we must never forget. How a fascist in the Oval Office tried to bring us to our knees. How racial and economic injustice was laid bare for all of us to see. And how a global crippling pandemic has authored this dystopian story that we can either learn from and close the book, or we can ignore and invite sequel after sequel. So as we take our first baby steps into 2021, let's see what we can do about all this. So there it is for today. I love you. I'm Charles Purcell.